it only recently occurred to me that I had never discussed Simba's Pride. I've discussed the soundtrack, I reviewed The Lion King, I think I maybe mentioned it in my original Lion King review back in 2010, but I've never dedicated the time to just talking about Simba's Pride. And here's an unpopular opinion. I prefer Simba's Pride to The Lion King. I absolutely adore this film, and this was an obsession of mine. I had a Simba's Pride lunchbox when I was growing up, and I had the playset. I had goldfish called Simba, Kiara, and Kovu, and just everything about this film I really adore. This is obviously the sequel to Disney's Lion King. It was released in 1998, and I had the VHS, and I watched that VHS a lot. It's directed by Darryl Rooney, with a screenplay by Cindy Marcus and Flip Cobbler, and we have a brilliant voice cast with, of course, Matthew Broderick as adult Simba, Neve Campbell as Kiara, Jason Marsden as Kovu. And for me, the reason this works very well is because of Kiara and Kovu. I absolutely love them as characters. I love the design of them. I love the narrative. Simba obviously has a daughter now, and Kiara doesn't, quite the antithesis of what young Simba was like. Kiara doesn't want to grow up to be the queen of the Pride Lands, but Simba says it's in her blood. Whereas, when we think back to I Just Can't Wait to Be King in The Lion King, definitely a very different attitude to Simba, and I think that worked very well. It meant that we had a very different personality, a very different character. She just wants to be free, she wants to be happy, and she meets young Kovu. And Kovu's parentage is quite peculiar, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But Kovu and Kiara hit it off straight away. We see them grow up, they fall in love, but this is also based on a William Shakespeare play. There are Hamlet references in The Lion King. Here we have Romeo and Juliet of these two families who are not allowed to unite. Kiara as Juliet, Kovu as Romeo. And Zira and her children, Nuka and Netanya, and Kovu are not allowed in the Pride Lands. And as soon as Simba finds out that his daughter is spending time with Kovu, this is not going to go down well. And of course it follows a kind of similar Romeo and Juliet story of, will these star-crossed lovers ever be able to be together, and will the families, or the prides, the packs, put their differences aside? And it's so beautiful. It's very intense, and it's so emotional, and one of my favourite Disney films ever. And I'd say with confidence it's my favourite Disney sequel. I don't know if it's my all-time favourite Disney film, if we're just looking at animations, maybe, but certainly it's my favourite sequel, and I think it takes what we learn in the first film and works with it fantastically and throws in some amazing songs. The soundtrack for this is just insane. He Lives in You is gorgeous. We Are One, which is a song sung by Simba and Kiara, I absolutely love. Upendi, One of Us, Love Will Find a Way, utterly stunning songs, as I talk more about those in my soundtrack review. Upendi is so beautifully animated that sticks in my mind so vividly, particularly when they're in the seat that's made out of leaves, and it's like they're on a log ride, and it's a lot of fun. Rafiki is rather delightful. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. And My Lullaby is one of my all-time favourite Disney songs. This is sung by Zira, who is Kovu's mother, and she's singing about how Kovu will one day rule the Pride Lands, and that's what she's nurturing her son to do. And there's a line in this that says, Scar is gone, but Zira's still around to nurse this little lamb until he learns to be a killer, etc. And when I was younger, based on that line, and also based on the animation design of Kovu, I thought he was Scar's son. And it was only relatively recently that I realised that if that was the case, that would mean Kiara and Kovu were related, and that would be weird. And I did a lot of digging, and it turns out that that is not the case. They are not related. Scar is not the father of Kovu. And there are a lot of information kind of backing this up and explaining why this isn't the case. But if that is the case, why would he be looking after Kovu? Where is the father? Who is the father? There are a lot of questions. And I realise that there are also questions about whether Scar is Nuka or Vitani's father, which I don't believe he is. There's kind of no real suggestion. Certainly with Vitani, Nuka, maybe. Nuka does look a lot like Scar. But that was something that always confused me a lot, relatively recently. But either way, I love that song. I love the characters. It is utterly stunning, beautifully animated. The roasty toasty princess bit is scarring, ironically. Really, really adored. Can't believe I've never discussed it. It was, growing up, one of my favourites, and it still is. And I feel like it's massively underrated. That's not to say that people don't know about it or don't watch it, but compared to a lot of Disney films, I feel like Simba's Pride does not get the love and attention it needs. Timon and Pumbaa are brilliant. Zazu, brilliant. I think I retained all of the fabulous elements of The Lion King and gave it something a little bit different. And for me, it will always be a firm favourite.